as we start the meeting. And in that score, I will also have to check whether from the side of the administration, whether everybody who needs to come and present to the committee has been able to also log in, because I don't know everybody has logged in. You'd indicate that. But in relation to the first item, it's purely an item for members of this committee, because that's their report, which they need to adopt as a committee report, a report which was circulated. However, I will still give the secretarial support to present the report to members, as it is usually the case. And we have taken counsel from that yesterday we didn't deal with this report. We agreed to deal with it today as a formal process of Parliament. With that, honourable members, I take the opportunity once again to greet you and allow you to participate in the items as they would be presented this evening. That's basically that. I'm sure, Tim, because you would clarify, and your team, whether all the people that need to present to us would also be around. But for the first item, in the main, it is the committee members, because it relates to the committee.
Chair, before we proceed, can I please speak?
On what item?
I would like to speak related to your remarks and the rules of engagement in virtual meetings.
Okay, I'm listening, Honourable Fanda.
Honourable Chairperson, I think we have been more than generous. Having virtual meetings is indeed very difficult, and I think we've tried our very best to make sure that we increase collegiality in our committee. But yesterday's meeting was very, very disappointing. And in particular, of late, what is your turning a blind eye to the rudeness and name calling of some members of this committee. Yesterday, I was referred to as a child. I was told to go back to Swaziland, and you let it go. So going forward, Chair, we are going to be very, very insistent that these meetings are run according to the rules of Parliament. And part of that, there is absolutely not a single rule in Parliament that says cameras must be off because other members don't want to see other members' faces when they speak. In Parliament, we don't exit the room when other people speak. So we'll no longer be indulging that member. So again, to request you to please chair these meetings fairly. We have conducted ourselves without siding with different political parties, but of late I've seen you doing that. So just to remind you, there's no such rule. Please chair according to the rules of Parliament.
Honourable Member Van Dam, when you lay the rules to assist a meeting, the reason they are agreed upon, it's because it helps to run the meeting. Let me indicate that even in Parliament, there's been this request made that you'll have people who come in when they are not supposed to be on the screen. And there's been requests, similar requests, that let's ensure that the one who speaks, at least that's the one we see speaking there. Now, for this reason, there have also been requests by members that whilst it may be a requirement to have their cameras switched on as they speak, but given connectivity problems, for the sake of progressing in the meeting, there would be requests made that for as long we know that that's the member who's speaking, can we be able to proceed just to ensure that we increase connectivity on that member. So I just want to make this point that there's nothing unfair about it. It is just about assisting the meeting to run. Secondly, at this point in time, I have never been partisan as a chair in the way I've run, or being fair to this one or not on that one. I have tried in the best of my ability to ensure that at the end we can focus as a committee on matters at hand. And where I have been alerted that there is an order to be raised, I've allowed that for members to say, look, Chair, you didn't look at this, look at it at this point, and I would make my remarks in that regard to reprimand a situation that needs to be reprimanded. And I want you, when you participate in the meeting, participate freely without the fear that the chair may be treating you unfairly. That's what I expect from all other members. That's why in some instances, I could have easily closed the meeting on the basis that a summary has been made. And I know that for others, they think it may be a sign of weakness that you test that the members understand the summary of the meeting, because at the end, outside of the meeting, we must say the same thing about what is a committee decision vis-a-vis what could have been discussions, because the two may be quite different. You may have discussed a point initially, but that may not be what was the conclusion of the meeting of the committee, which is different from a ruling that's made, as you would know, honorable members, because if then a ruling has been made on the matter, it can be a matter we continue to entertain. But testing whether there's an agreement between members on what you are deciding on as a committee, I regard it as a way of also being fair, that you then have an opportunity to indicate that, no, look, whilst we agree with your summary, Chair, but please, you have not recognized that we have put an objection. May our objection be also noted in the summary. So that's for me the way I look at it. But in particular, with regard to yesterday, I did indicate that if there were problems in the way one would have made rulings on certain matters, you do know what to do. You'll formally complain so that there is a follow-up. I didn't hide that I had also connection problems yesterday. It's unfortunate, Honorable Van Dam, that what you are raising, I'm not sure whether it happened whilst we were in the meeting or after a meeting. That's a matter of record that one would have to get assistance from the support staff to go through the record, and I can come back to that matter afterwards. I do agree that we should run the meeting in line with the rules of Parliament, because these committees operate under the NA rules and orders. If we can all accept that, it will make the meeting to run very smooth. The switching off of the cameras, in my view, has never been about that a particular member may not want to see a particular member appearing on the camera. But instead,
it's always
instead, I have requested all members, as part of my opening remarks, that let's make sure that we switch off and only the one who is speaking. And I've given the instances why we needed to do that. Firstly, it will be because you may be doing something else, but your camera is on, and it may be linked to what we do in the meeting. And I gave examples because those were proven, and there were photos taken of people who are not in the dressing code of a meeting because they believe that way they are not seen, and we see them anyway. So that's basically that. There's no intention to try and collapse a meeting by being unfair to anyone. if there's anything that this committee has done has been able to allow people to speak, I'm saying even at a time that we experience disconnection problems, you will always ensure that we go back to the member and check if that member is still able to get back and speak, because we value the contribution of every member of the committee, irrespective of the political party that you come from. And from where I'm sitting, most of the recommendations that have been made by this committee were not partisan, but a contribution of all members of the committee. This is how I've seen it thus far. But as I said, formal complaints can be lodged in so that at least the meeting is not held back for that reason. But I've noted the points that you've raised. Having said that, honorable members, may I request that we in earnest begin the meeting in relation to the items that we said we'll deal with, starting with the item on ICASA, and that will then be followed by presentations from people that need to present to us. And in this regard, I would check with Tembingosi. My request remains the same, that we listen to him, as he will be now the speaker on the platform, and we can switch our cameras on to allow him to present. And if you are going to flight the document from your side. But honorable members, I take it that you also received the document well on time. But it is just the formality that we reminded ourselves on yesterday, that it has to be adopted formally by the committee. Over to you, Tembingosi. Tembingosi?
Hello, Chairperson, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Chairperson. Good evening and good evening, honorable members. Chairperson, before I go to the report, I just want to confirm that we do have Mr. Hannes Dubason, who's representing Bemau. We do have Mr. Aubrey Chabalala, who's representing the Communication Workers Union. We do have Ms. Zolisa Sigabi, who's representing the SABC Editorial Forum. And I have shared the link just before the start of the meeting with Mr. Richard Desai, who will be representing the Independent Producers Organization. Chairperson, to then we also been joined by Honorable Majosi and Honorable Gumbo from the list of members that I read earlier on. Chairperson, going to the report, this is the report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications on the consideration of the communication received from the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies on the filling of 6 vacancies on the Council of the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, dated 14 July 2020. The Portfolio Committee on Communications, the committee, having considered communications received from the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, the Minister, on her recommendations, having considered the 10 names submitted by the National Assembly on the 9th June 2020, reports as follows. On 30th June 2020, the Minister addressed correspondence to the Speaker of the National Assembly, in which she requests permission to appoint councillors in only 4 of the 6 vacant positions. According to the Minister, the proposed candidates do not possess skills relating to the digital economy, cybersecurity, and trends of emerging technologies, which is necessary for ICASA to effectively execute its mandate. Accordingly, the Minister requested the National Assembly to embark on a new appointment process to fill the 2 vacancies that would remain if a request was agreed to. On 13 July 2020, the Minister addressed further correspondence to the Speaker of the National Assembly, identifying the names of the 4 candidates that she intends appointing, namely Mr. Chair should read Dr. Kiabetswe Mudimuweng, Mr. Peter Zimri, Advocate Lutano Mkumatela, and Ms. Yolisa Kedam. The Minister addressed a 3rd letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly later that day, identifying the names of 2 additional candidates that she intends appointing if her request to appoint only 4 councillors is not agreed to, namely Dr. Charles Lewis and Ms. Dikeledi Moshi. On 14 July 2020, the committee met to consider 3 letters and made the following observations and recommendations. 1. The committee has complied with the procedural steps to fill the current vacancies on the ICASA Council, including advertising the vacancies, shortlisting candidates, allowing public participation, conducting interviews, and finally reaching a unanimous decision on the names to be recommended. Furthermore, the National Assembly concluded the process of identifying suitable candidates when it adopted the 10 names on June 9, 2020. The Minister has exercised her discretion as provided for in the ICASA Act by considering the 10 names, from which she recommended the following 6 names: Dr. Kiabezwe Mudumuweng, Mr. Peter Zimri, Advocate Lutando Mkumatela, Ms. Yolisa Kedama, Dr. Charles Lewis, and Ms. Dikeledi Moshi. As you would see, Chairperson, their skills and qualifications are listed on the report. The committee is of the view that the requirements in terms of Section 5(3)(b) of the ICASA Act will be met with the following selection as proposed by the committee, and with which the committee differs with the Minister in respect of 1 candidate only: Dr. Kiabezwe Mudumuweng, Ms. Yolisa Kedama, Mr. Zolani Hositsile Matthews, Mr. Peter Zimri, Advocate Lutando Mkumatela, and Dr. Charles Lewis. As the previous table, Chairperson, the skills and qualifications of all 6 candidates are also listed on this table. The committee supports the Minister's choice of candidates number 1 to 5. However, the committee is of the view the recommendation to appoint Ms. D. Moshi will result in the provisions of Section 5(3)(b)(2) of the ICASA Act not being met. The relevant section reads as follows. 3. Persons appointed to the council must be persons who, when viewed collectively, are representative of a broad cross-section of the population of the Republic and possess suitable qualifications, expertise, and experience in the field of, amongst others, broadcasting, electronic communications and postal policy or operations, public policy development, electronic engineering, law, information technology, content in any form, consumer protection, education, economics, finance, or any other relevant expertise or qualifications. It is the view of the committee, having considered the candidate skill set as recommended by Minister, that the crucial scale of postal services experience is lacking. The committee is of the view that only Mr. Z.K. Matthews possesses postal services experience, which it deems necessary for the effective functioning of the council. The committee notes that while Ms. D. Moshi possesses expertise in ICT policy and regulations, 5 candidates already possess this skill over and above the broader skills and expertise they possess individually. The legal opinion received from the Constitutional and Legal Services Office in Parliament dated 14 July 2020 affirms the discretion of the Minister and the committee's compliance with the process in terms of the ICASA Act. It is in the interest of South Africans and necessary for the stability and functioning of ICASA, as well as in the interest of the communications sector, that the appointment process of ICASA councillors be urgently completed. There are currently only 3 councillors, which may lead to ineffective and compromised governance of ICASA at a critical time when the ICASA Council has crucial decisions to make. The recommendations of the committee are as follows. The committee unanimously recommends that the National Assembly, 1, rejects the request by the Minister to fill 4 vacancies, 2, accept the first 5 names submitted by the Minister in as far as these names are drawn from the list of preferred candidates adopted by the National Assembly, informed by 1, the appointment process the committee undertook, 2, the broad sense of skill set required responding to the convergence phenomena and as annotated in legislation, 3, the individual performance of candidates during the interviews, 4, the demographics of the country, and 5, other imperatives such as gender balance, and 3, request that the Minister, in terms of Section 5(1)(b) of the ICASA Act, to review her recommendation in respect of her proposed candidates, number 6, Ms. Dikeledi Moshi, and to consider the appointment of Mr. Zolani Matthews, who brings the expertise and experience in the postal sector, a skill that is necessary for ICASA in realizing its regulatory objectives for a converged sector. The report to be considered. Chairperson, that is the report of the committee on the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. May I then present the report to the members so that we formally deal with the report. I will now look at the hands for members who would want to speak on the item. Honorable Mulala, I note your hand. Any other member?
Chair, can I move for the adoption of the report as we have long discussed it, Chair?
Honorable Mulala moves for the adoption of the report. Any seconder to that? Honorable Mackenzie seconds. Are there any objections to adoption of the report? Seems not.
No objection.
Is that an objection? Because
No.
I want you to raise a hand and speak if you're objecting.
No, I was just saying no objection.
Okay, I take it that there are no objections because I don't see a hand there. Honorable members, then the report has been adopted and it will be duly sent to the National Assembly for consideration of the National Assembly. Thank you on that item. May I then check again those that are ready to present between BIMAO and the CW, and as well as you said you also have the Editorial Forum. Have they also logged in?
Chairperson, Ms. Zolisa Sikabi, the SABC Editorial Forum.
Okay. Honorable members, if you agree, we'll start with the unions as requested by the committee, and then we'll take the others that also requested to come and present before the committee. Is CW ready to present? And then we'll take BIMAO, and then from there we'll take Editorial Forum, and then the Independent Producers Organization.
Yes, Mr. Aubrey Chabalala is here from the CW, and I think he's also been trying to talk as we were speaking, but he is here. He should be ready, and his document was shared with members as well. Thank you very much.
All right. Just as we are going to get the presentations, again on the presentations would give at least maximum 15 minutes per presentation. If you can do less, that's still fine, but maximum 15 minutes. We'll only take a discussion or questions from members after all presentations would have been made. And I'm making the assumption that as per the request of the committee, those that also have direct interest and may have to respond later in another committee meeting have also logged in or are following the discussions in the different platforms. Is Mr. Chabalala ready to present?
Yes, good evening, Chair. Thank you very much. We are ready to present. We can go ahead right now.
Okay, thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first and foremost, we highly appreciate that we are invited to present a side of the workers' view in terms of the developments at SABC.
Even if you can see you once, Mr. Chabalala, for those who may not know who's speaking, just for our record.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I'm Opisha Balala, the Communication Workers Union General Secretary. We representing the workers at SABC together with the other organization called the BEMAU. The presentation that I'm going to present now is on behalf of Communication Workers Union. And we pass our greeting to all honorable members of the parliament. Our view as a Communication Workers Union with regards to the turnaround strategy or the corporate plan presented by SABC, which includes the retrenchment of workers, as we've heard from the media, and I want to make emphasis on that as we heard from the media, that the targeted 600 workers will lose their jobs. We want to start by saying that we remain committed in engaging all the key stakeholders on the turnaround strategy that will take the SABC forward. We believe that the public broadcaster stands a chance of being one of the lucrative assets of the public through its content, finances, and administratively. Also, as the union, we also equally acknowledge that there are indeed historical challenges that needs to be corrected going forward. We confirm that we've also had a meeting with the executive management of SABC on the 11th of June 2020, which was also accompanied by the chairperson of the board. The reason that we raised this meeting issue is that we discussed around the turnaround strategy. And one of the questions that we raised with the management of SABC is that how far is the process of the skills audit? In that meeting, they confirmed with us to say that the process of skills audit has not finalized. And as a result, in that meeting, we could not discuss further anything around the human capital or anything that has to touch around retrenchment. But tragically, the Sunday newspapers, because it was on Thursday, were talking about that meeting, talking about retrenchment, which we found it that the management of SABC did not engage us in good faith. On the turnaround strategy, we think it is critical that we deal with the turnaround strategy, looking at the priorities as pillars of the turnaround strategy. But we cannot engage on a turnaround strategy failing to acknowledge the fact that there's a number of role players in the industry that will make your turnaround strategy effectively. Why we say that, we raise these 5 pillars as labor, one being the digital migration, the online revenue stream, the public broadcaster funding model, for the unfunded broadcasting mandate, and we want to elaborate further on that particular one. The 5th one being the stringent regulation on the broadcaster itself. So when we unpack these 5 pillars as labor, we say that digital migration, this pandemic COVID-19 has actually presented new opportunities for us to fast track the process of the digital migration. Our view is that digital migration should be an integral part of a turnaround strategy. And hence we have raised this issue to say you cannot have a corporate plan that is exclusive of the very important key role players in the industry. Because when you talk about digital migration, you obviously involve institutions such as ICASA and of course the government in terms of the department. So the digital migration will also assist us in including of establishment of the new channels, both on radio and television, and also incorporating the partnership with the community-based broadcasters, because that partnership will be very critical going forward. This may as well mean that there is a need to expand on the human capital in order to broaden the broadcasting scope. And when we talk about the human capital, we're not only talking about adding warm bodies, but we also have to talk about the reskilling and upskilling of the current workforce that we have, so that it will be able to adapt very easily with the fast developing industry, particularly on issues of 4IR. Now, on the second pillar, which is online revenue stream, this is very important because the reports are indicating that close to 70% of advertisers trending are now moving towards the online content. and there is a lesser interest on the conventional broadcaster, as it were. So therefore, the SABC must be also commended for have been swiftly moving and expanding on that space. But the weaknesses thereof is that the SABC have not been able to accumulate revenue from those platforms. So it's a very important place that in as much as you go online, but as a public broadcaster, you must be able to generate revenue in that space that will enable SABC to go forward in terms of the financial backup. We cannot move that or discharge that from the third pillar, which is the funding model. Whilst we're talking the online funding revenue stream, we also have to look into the area of the OTTs. Now, we know that this area is the LISA regulated space, and the Netflix, Facebook, and all those who are broadcasting the content into the country through the streaming are not really highly regulated as the traditional broadcasters. And they bring massive, massive competition in that particular space. And that's where we call for a regulated, not highly, but a regulated OTT space so that we can be able as a country to generate three critical things. One of those, we have a broadcasting levy coming from those institutions, but two, to build on the infrastructure, because what they do, they just take away massive revenue without building infrastructure in the country. But most important, the human capital, broadly so, we're talking about arts and culture, which must find a space and expression in those channels or platforms. We talk about our artists that are not really benefiting out of that. There is a slow growth in that, but it's not satisfactory. So we have to look broadly into that so that it can assist in terms of empowering our people here, but also compete on a equivalent plane with SABC. At this point in time, they have a free flow. So that the fourth pillar that we need to talk about, and just before I move to the fourth pillar, again, when you talk of the funding model, you also talk of government, because there is a need for the broadcasting grant that must come from government, and we need to talk about the proportional broadcasting grant so that it assists the public broadcaster. The TV licensing itself, it has shown that is not really a workable mechanism that can be used in this time and space. So we have to explore other new dynamics to deal with this particular issue. So this moves us to the fourth pillar, which talks about the unfunded mandate. We think this is another opportunity missed. And we think deliberately the SABC management talks about the unfunded mandate as an obstacle. But because they are focusing on that, they don't see opportunities that comes with it. They always cry foul. But we have always said as Labour, if you look at the space where this unfunded model mandate is, the broadcasting of whatever the government wants to announce to the nation, or the President of the Republic is on TV, wants to announce, particularly recently around the COVID-19, the funerals of the public figures or national figures, issues around education and health, you find a massive viewership and listenership. Today, every time when a president is going to talk about the COVID-19, many people tune in either on TV or listen on radio to know exactly what is happening around the country. So that is an opportunity missed by a management that does not see opportunities in terms of marketing. Because if you look abroad, in number of the broadcasters, when they broadcast these such types of news, you'll find that advertised on the screen through images. Because it's that space that gives you an audience, and there is one that many advertisers or marketing people are craving for. So therefore, it's an opportunity missed. It can create a massive revenue if SABC really focus on strategies on how to advertise this period. For example, there's a number of products that can be given in that particular space. So we think that the unfunded model, besides the fact that we need to talk to government to support SABC in terms of making sure that the unfunded mandate is going forward. But it also presents an opportunity itself. So this all gloom and down of SABC is failing to go beyond what is presented before us. So as Labour, we are very much worried that we have a management that does not think along those lines. And having said that, you also need a manpower to assist you there to explore that space. On the stringent regulation, I think we have touched as we unpack all our pillars. The conventional broadcasters are indeed highly regulated, including on the private sector. They are. But as we have expressed on the OTTs, that they are not really regulated. Hence, they have an upper hand on the national institutions that provide employment to our people, that build infrastructure, that are here to service our nation. We allow the international players to have more advantage on them. So it's something that we need to deal with. And by saying so, we also need to accelerate the implementation of the digital migration. That's very key. One area, as we move, those are the 5 pillars that we talk about, but we don't want to leave out other key elements. And we think that the private sector in the main is not innocent on the SABC news. And we feel strongly that a probe must be done around the issue of how they allocate the advertisement scorecards. If you look at the same advertisement slot on what we call the traditional radio stations, or those ones that are broadcasting indigenous languages, vis-a-vis to the previously white-only listening stations, you'll find that the advertising scorecards are not the same. And I think it's something that needs to be engaged very tough with the Competition Commission. As we speak now, out of the top 10 radio stations in this country, SABC occupies 8 spots, with Ukhozi FM over 7 million, Umhlobo Wenene over 5 million. And these are the stats not by us, but of course by the REM, which is the Radio Audience Measurement, which is under the Broadcasting Research Council. So when they give us, if you look at the top 10, you also find number 10 is Jacaranda FM. It was also an SABC station that was sold at some stage. So it shows you the quality that SABC comes with, both in the content as well, and also the work that has been done by the people that SABC intends to retrench. And also what we need to look at, we have taken, because we did not have the 2019-2020 stats by the REM, so we have taken the stats of the 2018. It shows on the time spent on the listenership. Phalaphala FM is the one leading the pack of the most people on average spending time on listening to Phalaphala FM. It's actually 3 hours, 42 minutes. And the radio stations that have 3 hours and above are all coming from SABC. The last one being Lesedi FM on 3 hours. So where is this crisis of saying we don't have sufficient enough access to advertisers? Because what advertisers are looking for is audience and viewership. And SABC has. So it only tells you that work is not efficiently done by the management of SABC to turn around things in terms of collecting revenue. Instead, what do we see? We see massive reduction or discounts on advertisement, which kills the revenue of SABC. So this is not a fault of a worker on the ground who's not taking decision. It is a fault of those who are making decision to make discounts, while smaller stations, which are so-called private stations, are not making discounts and are making a kill. And that's why they are seen to be successful compared to SABC. In the news channel, it's warm to say now that 404, which is a news channel TV station, has now lived and it's on top of the pyramid in that space. So what does that mean? It means that the workers that are at SABC are giving what the viewers want to see. And of course, the broad scale, which includes not limited to the unfunded model, the unfunded mandate, brings more viewership and listenership. That's why SABC is rising above that. So we have to talk about these things before we deal with the question of retrenchment. Now, we think the assessment that says that retrenchment are premature is correct. And without a fully fledged skills audit that should have been concluded, if you will recall, the retrenchment is not a new thing. 2 years ago, we agree when we stopped the retrenchments that we should conduct what we call a skills audit. In the skills audit, it will enable us to know what type of talent we have, where we need to strengthen, and where we need to nurture. What SABC is doing now, it just wants to cut 600. And at the end of the day, they might release the workers that they actually need most. And of course, you cannot do a turnaround strategy without looking at the 5 pillars that we're talking about. And the 5 pillars that we're talking about will be effectively informed by the skills audit. Because when you talk about the redeployment of workers, when you talk about the upskilling of workers, when you talk about workers in right position, will also inform you how you move forward. So SABC have not done this homework and is actually excluded everyone. They've closed themselves in a room and take decisions that will involve everyone, including all other key role players in the industry. That on itself is a danger. They did not even include organized labor. So it's a very important thing that we deal with and analyze. But we also have to make emphasis that the president of BEMA will also give us an insight in terms of the exposing attempts to manipulate the skills audit process to justify the plan of retrenchment. We have recordings for that, but I'll leave that to the president of BEMA. But SABC itself is not new. We have a history at SABC of engaging on a premature retrenchment. In 1997, SABC embarked on retrenching about almost the same number of 600. But 3 months down the line, same year, they found themselves having to re-employ many of those that they've retrenched because they were prematurely retrenched at a particular time, and it was not a well done type of a plan in terms of that process. But let's go to this corporate plan of SABC, and I hope that the honorable members of parliament has it. On page 45, they actually demonstrate how they want to deal with the staff numbers. It's their report, not ours, and they make projections. They are saying in 2019, spending 2.3 billion on workers, and the number of workers was 3,245. They are saying under their watch in 2020, they are now having 3,000 workers and 59, less than 3,245 of 2019. That is because of natural attrition, resignation, and dismissal, and all of that. So they have a lesser number than 2019. But look at their bill, salary bill. It has gone to 2.4 billion rands. So that on its own show you that the salary bill has increased, the number of workers has decreased. In their projection, they are saying come 2021, they want to see SABC with less numbers. And what are actually these numbers? They are saying they want to have 2,850. But look at the expenditure. It's still sitting at 2.3 billion, which is comparable to 2019 of 2.3 billion. So even after this retrenchment, they are basically saying that they will be in the same spot as 2019. Furthermore, in their projection in 2022, they are saying that they will have
As you
a
wrap up,
staff.
Mr. Chabalala, I'm saying as you wrap up. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Chairperson. They are saying that in 2022, they will have a lesser staff at 2.1 billion. In 2023, they have 2,000 workers and 51 at 2 billion. That demonstrates that they have not done any cut cost. In as far as that question is concerned, where they are driving us to say SABC is doing a staff reduction to manage cut costs. That is not addressed. But quickly to touch on the number of issues that I need to deal with, we feel that there is a more concerted efforts to commercialize the public broadcaster. And with the influx of the new staff, which was employed in the last 8 months, simultaneously moved to retrench workers, there is no indication of reducing the cost of salaries except to say they want to turn around SABC to the commercial station. The more expenditure has not been spoke about on the service providers. They have not cut on the service providers to use what they have on the internal resources, which is human capital. They are spending more on legal firms or law firms instead of using their employee relations officers, which are highly skilled, highly qualified, and highly paid. On the bailout condition, it also includes the investing on the content, and they also not talking about the service provider there, which are independent producers. Because our fear is that if we do not create enough space for independent producers to compete and have traditional producers, we're not going to improve the content. On the point of the serious allegation, which they made that there was a sabotage to the president, which is tantamount to treason, because of the wrong clip of the state president was played at a particular time. SABC, we've listened to them when they came here at the portfolio committee. When you asked them about this question, they said to you, the matter is sub judice and they cannot comment on it. The truth is, a senior person who was responsible for the final product to go on air, which is the executive producer, was actually found not guilty by SABC. 2, the bulletin editor, who's the second chief in command in terms of that process, was given a written warning. And the worker who do the collecting of the work, who's actually not responsible for the final product, was dismissed. This shows, 1, a demonstration of inconsistent, but 2, that a poor worker was used as a scapegoat. But it's important, Chair, that the Parliament knows that the charge sheet of that worker was not on the sabotage as it was announced publicly. It was on gross misconduct and putting the name of the company into disrepute. So it's another form of misleading the Parliament. As we close, we remain committed in turning around things at SABC as Labour. We want to engage. As you can see, that we are trying to do our best. We are calling for this process to be taken off, Section 189 to be abandoned, so that we can go back to the drawing board, as we have indicated at CCMA. Thank you very much, Chair.
Mr. Chabalala, will now give over to Bema.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable members of Parliament, SABC Board Chairperson, executive directors of the SABC and other parties that has an interest in this matter. Thanks for this opportunity to enlighten Parliament in respect of our concerns on behalf of workers of the SABC. We fully agree with our brother that has just made a presentation. There is just one little correction that we need to make, and that is that in 1997 the SABC retrenched 1,200 staff members, and they rehired quite a lot of those staff members back in a short space of time at an inflated rate, because those employees knew that they were wanted by the SABC, their skills was required by the SABC, and they basically could make their price. From the onset, we want to say that we are not opposed to the right sizing of an organization if that is necessary. But that must then happen in terms of a fair procedure, and it must be the last resort. We are not convinced that it is a last resort. We are also concerned about the fact that the SABC has implemented their turnaround strategy without any consultation, and only now, when they are at the back end of that turnaround strategy, that they want to now consult, which is not the correct way to do that. Our presentation is also going to deal briefly with the issue of the sabotage. It's not an issue that I believe the question was asked, and we heard last night in the sitting of Parliament that those questions were asked, not been answered. We incidentally have the information, and we feel duty-bound to make that available to Parliament. If the Chair would allow me, I would go to our presentation and then speak to that presentation when we do our presentation in terms of. Just want to find it quickly. Chair, I'm not sure if that is visible.
Yes, you can see it. I take it members to see.
Right. Chair, so
Chair, thank you.
The first issue that we have is that there was a requirement to do a skills audit. That skills audit has not been completed, and that skills audit is fatally flawed. There's a requirement to not implement the turnaround plan, which will result in potential job losses before any consultation. We have evidence that the SABC already implemented parts of its turnaround plan. We are concerned about where the SABC's bailout money went, and we are of the view that some money has been wasted on non-revenue generating properties like litigation and investigations. We do not say that the SABC or any employer does not have the right to do that. What we are saying is that in a situation where an organization or a company is in the stress that it must focus on revenue generating properties, the litigation and those investigations can follow later. Then we had sight of the reasons for the Section 189, which we believe is been stated as failures on the side of management. We believe that all remedies has not been exhausted, and that only when that has happened that the SABC, if there is then still a need, proceed with a Section 189 process. Now, 2 years ago, when this process first started off, the DOC and the Portfolio Committee requested the SABC to conduct a proper skills audit to ensure staff are properly skilled, and if not, to train those particular staff to meet its operational requirements. Now, if one look at the SABC's presentation on the SABC Skills Audit 2019, which was recently presented to Parliament, Part 1, the SABC itself says the ultimate purpose of this exercise is to develop a plan and strategies that will enable human resources to identify current skills gap and devise plans to address these, to place employees in suitable positions based on qualifications and skills, and to assist in terms of talent management. On page 30 of the SABC's 2019 annual report, it says that its organizational structure is being adopted to ensure alignment with the new operating model, and it must be implemented in alignment with the outcome of the skills audit. So when the SABC told the Portfolio Committee that a skills audit is not a requirement for a Section 189 process, that is simply not correct, because here the SABC has recognized that particular, the skills audit as being an imperative part of that. In the technology division, for instance, we know that there are a shortage of skills and training as well. The training rates of the SABC has dramatically dropped in terms of those people that must take us into the digital environment that we are going to play in. Also on page 32 of its annual report of 2019, the SABC has stated the revised operating model will ensure an agile organization able to respond to challenges of the dynamic media environment. The organizational structure is being adapted to ensure alignment to the new operating model and will be aligned with the outcomes of the skills audit. It is clear that the SABC also regard the skills audit as very important. Now, what has happened subsequently is that on the 30th of June 2020, the SABC sent out an urgent request for employees to complete the skills audit. Prior to that, we engaged the SABC on the issue of the questionnaires. There are two issues that we raised around that. The first one was that employees are working from home. Not all of them have access to means to complete that skills audit. And the second one was that the skills audit had irrelevant questions in it. It was drafted in such a way that employees did not understand it and they had a problem with it. Now, on the very same day, an SABC employee called the consultants to inquire about the accuracy of the skills audit process. After various concerns were raised, and we have letters in that respect where we raised issues about the skills audit. As we know, these days, all phones do record conversations, and I want, with permission, to play the specific clip, and here is a transcript of this to the committee.
Can you tell me what mechanism you use to assess my own skills? I view myself as highly skilled, but maybe the survey is not in a position to capture my skills levels.
Yes, I know about that. I have brought it to the attention of the SABC Human Resources. They said
just a point of order, Chairperson.
And that is what we need to do.
Chair, this
point of order, Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. You know, with respect to the presenter, there are a number of questions that come when you're recording people and the recording is then played publicly. Were the people in this interview aware that they were being recorded? I think that's a very important point, Chairperson, because I'm not sure that in fact you're allowed to do what Mr. Dubuisson is doing here. I'm just saying this on a point of procedure, and in fact I'd be happy to be guided by a legal advisor on this, but I'm not sure that you're allowed to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may respond, Chair.
Is there another hand? Is that
yes,
Honourable Dr. Ndlozi?
Yes, I think that what we are being played is a survey. It's hardly a private conversation, and the rules of survey are such that people agree to be recorded, and that's why it can be played. So it's not a private conversation. There's no invasion of anyone's privacy. As a matter of fact, it would seem to me that that's what is being played. But I'm also willing to be corrected by the person. If he's misleading us, then Honourable Mackenzie is right. But from what I see, it's a transcript from a survey. And surveys, they ask you, can we record you? You say yes or you say no. And that's why it can be played. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If we could just have clarity from the presenter on that, whether the survey did in fact contain that question. And thanks for the guidance, Dr. Ndlozi. Appreciate it.
Mr. Pearson?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, our understanding of the Interception of Communications Act is that if one party consents to the recording of any conversation, that it is not an invasion of privacy. Where the person who made this call has consented to it, it is perfectly legal to record such a telephone conversation.
May I rule that Honorable McKenzie, I see you want to still come back.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If Mr. Dubson is convinced of his legal standpoint, I'm happy to accept what he says. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I think what the slideshow is going to do, it's going to replay the entire conversation. I would rather move on, and the transcript is there. Chair, so when one then listened to this particular conversation, and this is not the only conversation, we have received several complaints of employees who said that we've been asked irrelevant questions. We have been asked questions that does not relate to our job. We have, and we found the skills audit questionnaires to be very difficult to answer. Now, if the consultant who's doing the skills audit has said that the skills audit questionnaire is not going to be to capture the skills of SABC employees correctly, that means it's fatally flawed. On top of that, according to the caller, to the people, the consultants who has done the skills audit, they have informed human resources of this. And despite being informed that the skills audit will not correctly capture the skills and competencies of employees, according to the caller, senior management has persisted with it. Now one cannot proceed with a retrenchment process where the SABC essentially has proposed that employees who's been declared redundant must then apply for jobs if a proper skills audit has not been done. So the SABC is also at the risk, like in 1997, of letting the wrong people go. In particular, people needed to execute its strategy, and unless a proper skills audit has been done, we're of the view that the Section 189 process cannot continue. Chair, then the SABC, our complaint is that the SABC has already implemented its turnaround strategy or plan. And here's an excerpt from its progress report that is dated April 2020. And when one look at the green part of that, it says the overall turnaround implementation is 46%. So almost half of the SABC's turnaround plan, which has or is going to probably result in about 600 employees losing their jobs, has been implemented, and then only then the SABC engage with employees in a consultation process. This is in terms of human resources. The previous one was the overall process. Human resources, 30% has been completed, stroke in place. Our concern, Chair, is, and this is just an example of what happened to the bailout money. My brother spoke about this.
Honorable Mlala, mute your mic. The background sound. Yeah, thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chair.
Switch your mic off. Yes.
We have seen evidence that the SABC has spent considerable amounts of money on litigation, and they still will spend. Recently, SABC went to court in an attempt to dismiss employees allegedly unprocedurally appointed. And as I say, this is just an example. The SABC lost that case. We have examples of external lawyers who have been appointed to chair simple disciplinary hearings, which is a managerial function. Now, and we have raised these issues with the SABC. We've raised these issues with, in particular, a law firm that was involved in this, where the outsourcing of those hearings in terms of the SABC's governance rules, the delegation of authority framework of the SABC, that is illegal to outsource, because essentially what the SABC is doing is they are giving powers to a non-employee, which is specifically prohibited by the delegation of authority framework. Now, despite this unsuccessful attempt of the SABC to undo the alleged irregular appointments, the SABC now has served employees, more than 100 of them, we believe, with letters to forward reasons why the SABC should not dismiss them. We're of the view that this is another process which is irregular, and it will land the SABC in trouble if they proceed to dismiss those employees who they allege has been irregularly appointed. The unions in the past raised concerns about irregular appointments, but it was never aimed at the employees, because employees do not appoint themselves. It was against management who breached those rules. Those managers are still employed by the SABC, and they have escaped the consequences. On the very same letters that the SABC used in the previous case in the Labour Court, those names of those managers are there, but they still work there. They've not been disciplined. Now, despite sound guidance that has been given, which in our view constitute direction by the Labour Court, the SABC has opted to ignore that. The top one is a clause that is now in the letter that has been sent to employees. And it says, kindly be advised, for the above mentioned reasons, the SABC intends not to recognize your purported contract of employment due to it being void ab initio. The letter therefore serves to afford you an opportunity to show cause. Now, if one, and I'm not going to bore the committee with this, the presentation is available. If one reads what the Labour Court has said in this judgment, the Labour Court simply said to the SABC, you actually got Section 188 of the Labour Relations Act puts conditions where an employee can be dismissed. The court went even so far to say, if employees has committed misconduct but by lying about their qualifications, you can dismiss them. If you believe that they've been appointed in positions where they're not competent, then you can do performance management on them, and you can then dismiss them based on poor performance. If employees have reached the age of retirement, you can then terminate their services on that basis. And then the court even said that the policies in terms of which employees have been appointed seems to constitute collective agreements, and the court was entirely correct in terms of that. The court said the SABC can file a dispute in terms of that and then have the policies interpreted. But it seems when we read this letter that the SABC is simply going to say in the near future to a number of employees, well, you've been dismissed, which will then result in more litigation against the SABC. Chair, then our concern is that what went wrong in 1 year, and when we use 1 year, we look at the SABC's financial statements. If one look at the audience that the SABC currently have, SABC 1 has got 25.8 million viewers. SABC 2, 24.6, SABC 3, 20.6. On the right-hand side are radio stations, the listenership of a number of radio stations. We do not believe that there is another broadcaster in Africa that has got these numbers. Why is it that the SABC cannot properly effect an income from these viewers and these listeners. The issue of TV licenses, we understand that it is a problem, and we have at some point in time, we have made an informal proposal that to fund the public broadcaster where data has been used, that there must be a premium put by government on data that has been sold to any person, say for instance R1 of every 100 rand, and that must go to the public broadcaster to fund the public broadcasting. But if one look at what has been stipulated here in the financial report of the SABC, only 31% of license fees has been collected. Now the SABC wants to increase license fees, and we said, why don't we decrease license fees to make it more affordable for more people? Nevertheless, there is a 3.1 billion rand possibility of license fees. The other issue is about the airtime of the SABC that has not been sold out. There is quite a big chunk of airtime that has not been sold out. We have proposed at some point in time to the SABC to say, lower the price so that you sell your airtime that you have, your advertising time. You sell that out, and then you gradually increase your price to then create a situation where at least airtime doesn't go to waste. That has not happened. Now, this is also from the SABC's financial annual statements, and it is important to note that the SABC has only now commenced development of a comprehensive digital strategy. Our concern is that the Section 189 is premature. Why does the SABC not wait for that strategy to properly kick off and then make a decision whether they still need to get rid of certain people? Our concern is, what has the SABC, this is from the financial statements, what have they done to address these particular issues? The funding model of the SABC, the over-reliance on commercial and advertising revenue. Chair, the SABC has been restructuring for the last 10 years, 12 years. That particular item is in every financial report, annual report of the SABC. It's still the same. But in this period, there were some boards and senior management or executive management that was able to manage the SABC in a way where it made a surplus. The issue about revenue generation, when one reads the statement of the SABC, it has a 71% audience share. And the SABC wants to, in the next financial year, 2019-2020, the SABC radio will focus its energy and resources to continue serving the nation and to defend the 71% audience share. Should we not wait for the defending of the audience share and the plans that the SABC is going to put in place before we then say, well, we need to get rid of some people? Now, this is also from the financial statements. Now, what is important, Chair, here is that it says losses have decreased over the past number of years. So it means that SABC is making progress in getting back to a positive figure on its financial statements. We ask, what strategy has been put in place to meet this competition? Because the SABC says we have faced stiff competition from pay TV, new free-to-air broadcasters, and OTT players. So certainly the SABC must first put strategies in place to deal with those particular issues before they then decide to embark on a Section 189 process. This is a excerpt from the letter that was sent, the Section 189 letter. Now, one read this is the reason for retrenchments. The total media advertising spend has shifted to different channels, most significantly to online video. While the shift in advertising spend away from the SABC is due to the organization not having an adequate online value proposition, it is also compounded by operational issues such as poor sales effectiveness, ineffective commercial product packaging, old competitive pricing models, inadequate technology structures, a lack of requisite skills, and inefficient business processes. Those are all management processes. And the question that we ask is, what has the SABC done to address those particular issues before serving a Section 189 letter? So we believe the Section 189 process is premature. We believe the SABC must fix the reasons for retrenchments first. Staff has not been involved at all in this strategy. The SABC should involve them. There should be a proper skills audit, and the SABC must stop spending money on non-core business. And we are saying, let's not go for the wrong low-hanging fruits. Then just briefly on the issue of the sabotage, this is a report that has been set out. And the answer that we have on that, Honourable Chair, is contained in a clip that was, we had members that was involved in this. So this is a recording from a disciplinary inquiry. Maybe I should not play this because it is naming a person. It is part of the presentation, but this is basically the transcript of this. One can see there that the acting output editor, who is also the current channel head of Channel 404, his response to a question was, I think it was negligence. Dereliction of
as you wrap up, Mr. Basin, as you wrap up, because I've also given that extra time for the time loss.
I am finished. I thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable Mulala, please mute your mic. We can hear you. You're driving.
Chair, I thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. We will now allow the Editorial Forum to present. Temgosi, is the Editorial Forum person logged in?
Yes.
Not present from there? Okay.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, honorable members. Thank you very much for inviting us to come and address you on our concerns regarding the developments at the SABC. I'm not alone. I am with three other members of the forum, Busisi Wenduli, Megan Lupke, and Sitlohula Toke. Thank you. These members will also add on after I've done the presentation for emphasis and also for clarity of issues that we're raising with you. The Editorial Forum is here to present the mandate of the SABC News staff, which represents editorial staff across all regions of the SABC, working for television, radio, and digital platforms. The Editorial Forum is a structure that was formed following the Communications Ad Hoc Committee's hearings in 2017 in response to the many years of governance failures by the SABC management and its successive boards. The structure was established after learning how the German public broadcasters, with our similar history of news censorship, worked to overcome editorial interference in their newsrooms. Its aim is to protect the newsroom against editorial interference, provide an immediate avenue to deal with issues of an editorial nature, ensure the proper adherence to the Broadcasting Act and the Constitution of the land, deliver on our public mandate, and truly become an independent public broadcaster whose only interest is to serve the South African public without fear or favor. As the new staff of the SABC, we believe that we have a voice and are obliged to air our views on the developments in the corporation, because under previous management, we had to fight to deliver on our public mandate. We are emboldened to do so, cognizant of the provisions of the Bill of Rights, Section 16(1)(a), regarding our right to freedom of speech, and the Protected Disclosures Act 1(e), which allows us to speak out where we believe the public mandate may be at risk. Our position as new staff, we are particularly concerned that the potential impact of the looming retrenchments on the newsroom's ability to deliver on its public mandate. It's really scary for us. We concur with the vision of a lean and efficient SABC if it is in the interest of the survival of the corporation. This is because we do not believe that we are entitled to employment. However, as citizens of a democratic state, which is based on the rule of law, we believe that the attainment of such a vision should be done through a process that is not only procedurally beyond reproach, but is also substantively just. The current state of the SABC newsroom. Our newsroom is currently limping due to the serious lack of both financial and human resources. Some programs are battling to deliver fresh content on air. We also rely heavily on freelance staff due to the moratorium on recruitment. The advent of the COVID-19 pandemic has also exacerbated the situation where teams have been drastically reduced either due to infections or quarantine, extensively increasing the workload on those who have to keep the work going. It is for these reasons that we would like to draw your attention to the following issues of concern for us. Lack of proper consultation and transparency. As indicated, we do not believe that we are entitled to jobs. However, we would like to assist the process in a meaningful way so that whether or not we remain after this, the institution is still able to deliver on its mandate. The SABC seeks to retrench 600 permanent employees and 1,200 freelancers. But as the staff, we do not know how the corporation arrived at those figures. Neither the new staff nor the new senior management have sat in a meeting where the current state of affairs was analyzed and a workable structure was workshopped so as to come up with a structure that is fit for purpose. Since 1993, news management, which is familiar with the operations on the ground and has the institutional memory, have played a key role in deliberations informing the restructuring of the newsroom in the past. However, this time around, and for the first time in our newsroom's history, news management was excluded from the process. Staff was only called to meetings where a draft structure was presented and they were given 4 days to make inputs. The Editorial Forum requested a week's postponement of the meeting and requested a copy of the proposed structure in advance so that they could analyze it and make informed contributions. But our request was declined. Our view, considering the developments at the time, was that management was rushing to tick boxes in preparation for the CCMA meetings, which were looming at the time. The proposed structure. To date, we have not officially received that structure as the new staff in order to analyze it properly. Those who managed to attend and get a glimpse of it did so virtually in meetings where the News GE presented it. From what we hear, it is concerning that it seems to be a simplified structure based on a commercial model, unsuited for a public broadcaster. We also understand that regions have been reduced, decreasing the newsroom's ability to access and cover diverse communities. In addition, job scales have been reduced and positions altered in a manner that is foreign to international public broadcasting norms. The skills audit. We are extremely concerned that the SABC has said that the skills audit is irrelevant to the current restructuring process. This is despite Parliament's injunction that all human resources processes should be finalized before Section 189 could be considered. We are surprised that the corporation could say the audit is irrelevant and have a restructuring process that does not take into consideration the skills base of its current employees. We insist that the skills audit should inform the restructuring process. As such, we would like to know what informs the proposed numbers of retrenchments, 600 permanent employees and 1,200 freelance staffers. Honorable members, we would like to draw your attention to the fact that the SABC does not accurately know the skills base of its employees. We would like to also draw your attention to the 2013 independent audit report conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers, which said at the time that only 1,868 of the qualifications could be authenticated. 68% of the personnel files had no proof of senior certificates. 24% of employees had non-related qualifications on file. Some files were missing, and 24% had fraudulently or non-compliant certificates, fraudulently acquired certificates. It also made serious revelations about management skills base and their ability to apply themselves. 7 years later, we as employees have not seen what efforts have been made to correct this sad state of affairs. The recent attempts at surveying the employees' skills were flawed. The questionnaires in the survey bore no relevance to our job descriptions, which rendered the process a waste of time and a waste of money. The external service provider appointed to conduct the survey admitted to this fact and insisted that we respond anyhow because the audit has to be completed. The audio evidence is available, as you may have heard from Premau's presentation, but it's also available upon request. The bouquet that the SABC is supposed to offer impacts on our ability to produce varied content, reach a multiplicity of audiences, meet our language mandate, take digital and 4IR developments on board. Yet all of these should in fact inform the company's strategy and its turnaround strategy. The institutionalization of the Editorial Staff Forum. After the parliamentary ad hoc hearings on the SABC, it was clear that something needed to be done to deal decisively with interference in defense of the public interest. Thus, we established this structure and proposed its institutionalization in our editorial policies as a legitimate structure guarding the editorial interest of the newsroom. Sadly, the final editorial policies launched recently excluded the Editorial Forum. We wrote a letter to the news subcommittee of the board on this matter. In it, we noted the conclusions of the News Inquiry report, which recommended the creation of an external news and current affairs advisory committee rather than the Editorial Forum or the ombuds, on the grounds that these would clutter the chain of authority in the newsroom and blur the line of authority and possibly paralyze the newsroom. We highlighted that despite this, in our final editorial policy document, the board never sought to address this matter, as none of the three options was chosen. Our view is that either the board does not appreciate the depth of the problem we seek to address with the creation of this structure, or they do not value editorial freedom in the same manner that we, as the foot soldiers on the ground do. Despite the cogent reasons advanced for the institutionalization of such a structure and the demonstration of how it helped the German public broadcasters in decisively dealing with censorship and editorial interference, the new subcommittee allowed the adoption of a policy that still does not ring-fence the newsroom from potential interference. The SABC's view is that the existence of the new subcommittee is adequate to thought interference, but we do not accept this because by its very nature, the board doesn't and shouldn't get involved in operational matters, and history is littered with examples of how previous news subcommittees either enabled or were powerless when it came to interference in the newsroom. We believe that democratic institutions should be built on the basis of principles and not around individuals at the helm of the institutions. This will guarantee their sustainability and their independence for the future. Currently, in terms of the new editorial policy, the editor-in-chief is the news GE. The forum becomes even more important because should we have an unprincipled incumbent in the future, the newsroom will not have avenues to deal with interference. The sabotage matter. Following the faulty broadcast of the President's address in September 2019, the SABC informed the public that this was a result of well-orchestrated collusion, which is an act of sabotage. Despite this, the implicated employees were not charged with sabotage, and no prima facie evidence was presented to the affected employees or to the staff of the SABC, as well as during the hearings, contrary to the public announcement. The public and the President were lied to, and nobody went back to withdraw that lie. Instead, the former HR head still went public to declare that 2 people have been charged and 1 matter is ongoing, giving the impression that acts of sabotage were proven. This is despite knowing the true facts. During the previous appearance of the SABC board, the corporation informed members of this committee that they couldn't respond on the issue because the matter was sub judice, even though the unions were informed that the matter was closed. The only matter that we are aware of is the defamation case against the SABC by one of the affected employees. We therefore submit that, despite the fact that this matter is in court, the SABC board has an obligation to address Parliament on it and cannot escape taking accountability on the basis of a sub judice rule. The staff has engaged management on various occasions regarding the unfortunate use of the term and the implications of such to the integrity of all employees in the newsroom. News management had considered that the use of the word was unfortunate and committed to raising the matter with the intention to retract the statement from the public domain. However, this has not happened. In conclusion, the SABC News staff calls for the following: the immediate stop to the Section 189 process, proper consultation with staff in a fair, transparent manner, which is procedurally and substantively fair, the proper auditing of the skills base of SABC employees, the immediate retraction of the word sabotage from the public domain, the review of the SABC editorial policy and the institutionalization of the News Staff Editorial Forum. An immediate task team be established to investigate the appropriate business model for the public broadcaster. With that, we thank you, Chair and honorable members, for the opportunity to address you. My team is on board for clarity and on specific issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gabi, I think when questions are asked, your members could respond to those. I think you've presented on behalf of the team. May I now take the last presentation from IPO?
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, honourable members, for allowing us to present today. Sorry, do I have my camera on?
Don't see you.
Let me turn it on. There you go.
Okay, and then we can see.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of issues. You know, I'm not here to defend the SABC executive, but certainly there are a number of concerns from the Independent Producers Organisation, which represents a very large chunk of the independent production programming on TV, which is, I believe, the majority. At its heyday, there were 200 or so companies contracted annually. The SABC, hello? Okay, I'm getting a bit of feedback. Today we are 67 or so companies that are on average being employed to produce work for the SABC.
Sorry, Chairperson. Excuse me. Point of order. Yes. I don't have the presentation that is being discussed now. I don't think we've received a presentation. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have the IPO's presentation.
Thanks, Honourable Mbuseni. There is no presentation. We were informed yesterday that there would be reaching out to the industry players, and it was only at the very last minute that we were afforded a place today to present our view. We have a number of areas we'd like to speak to. One is our understanding of the retrenchment process to date, some concerns around the retrenchment process, the role of the Minister, and the role of the Portfolio Committee in this. So they are high-level interventions which speak to the principles of an independent public broadcaster.
Yeah, may we just stop at that point? Tembinkosi, if you can just clarify why we have this situation, because we would have asked that we have presentations so that whatever people say, that's in writing. And secondly, these are those that have requested, not necessarily that the committee requested. Can you clarify that?
All right. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, just to assist, we received a request at around, you know, Chairperson, that the three stakeholders that is presented before you have actually returned and requested to make the presentation before the committee. However, at around 3 o'clock this afternoon, then I received a request from IPO through a WhatsApp message to also be considered. And as Chairperson would know, that the aim of the committee was to then engage with all internal stakeholders in the SABC. I think, Chair, it was then when, as the management committee, we then agreed that we would afford them 10-minute allocation, 10-minute slot to make their presentation. And then I did request that the presentation be sent, excuse me, Chair, that the presentation be sent. However, just before the start of the meeting, we received an email which did not necessarily have a presentation, but just indicated what points that IPO would speak on, as the Mr. Tisai has just indicated those points as he was talking to you. So, Chair, we did not send out an invitation. We received a request from the IPO, as we did not send out invitations to the stakeholders that had presented to the committee earlier, but they themselves had made requests to make presentations to the committee. I hope that I've clarified, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, honorable members, Honorable Ndlozi, I'm sure you would have had a response. I think we can make the call on whether we would listen to the presentation of those points or we take it back to get a proper presentation, so that whatever people say, it's indeed part of the record of Parliament. But you asked the question, so I would want you to get the first opportunity to speak on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's the status of this organization. We asked about stakeholders that are involved inside the SABC, not broader industry stakeholders. I'm not comfortable with us proceeding with this presentation, particularly also because it is not sent prior to us. And we did not, even last night, when we were discussing about the presentations that are going to be processed today, including the correspondence that was sent of Parliament to all of us as to which presentations will be done today. And even in your introduction, I don't remember you speaking about this presentation. I'm not comfortable. I would like all of us honorable members to proceed. It's 10 to 8. That means we've got just over an hour to entertain 3 presentations substantially of actually directly involved stakeholders inside the SABC that we were properly informed of through correspondence over many days ago, but also whose presentations we have received and had time to individually on our own process. I'm not comfortable with the direction we're taking now on those grounds. This can be entertained at a later stage when we have been properly convinced as to what is the value of listening to industrial players and not stakeholders directly involved inside the SABC on one hand, but on the other, a presentation that must come way before. I think it's unprofessional. We can't be treated like that, Nkosi. Thanks.
Chair, maybe I could assist, and I'm willing to keep it to 3 minutes. There's actually 4 very important points.
No.
You consider
independent. No, can I make a ruling on the matter? I thought you wanted to say something else. May I make a ruling on the matter that the briefing given was that it's an internal stakeholder, because we only needed internal stakeholders for today. And we do have requests from other industry players, which we didn't take because the focus is on internal ones. The response we had was that was an internal. That's why in the opening, Honorable Ndlozi, I did mention IPO was because it was like we marginalized one and recognized others. But with this clarity given, I think we should send you back. We are consistent to what we did yesterday. That if members feel that they would want to engage differently, that's what we'll do. So we'll call when we call the others, and please, you will send a presentation in that regard. So let me apologize, members, that there would have been such a confusion brought by this late request to present.
Chair, could I just say one thing before I leave? We produce the majority of programming for the SABC. We're very involved in the internal affairs. So the distinction between us being an external and internal player, I think, is very blurred. We've been involved very deeply in a number of discussions over the years.
Chair.
Chair.
Honorable Kubega.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I was going.
You can leave Mr. aside there.
Chair.
Honorable Kubega.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I think you have ruled to the matter as Honorable Ndlozi have presented. With due respect, can the IPO, as we are saying, they will come in the next round with the other external industry players? Can we just give these 3 ones? Because indeed, these ones, as you are saying, it was proper because they have sent their presentation to us in order that we can engage all this presentation robustly. So not to say we are marginalizing him. Can he just be patient to have in the next round when we are inviting, we will invite them with these other ones, players. Thank you very much, Chair.
I've ruled on the matter. It's clarified whether there's a blaring line or not, Mr. Desai, that we'll focus on those that have given us the presentations. I think next time when we call other players, you'd also give us a presentation in advance. Thanks for
Thank you, Chair. We're more than willing to give you a presentation. We are very disturbed by the September 2nd date that you've given other players. We think there's matters of urgency here, in particular the independence.
Can the ICT help?
We want a portfolio.
Thank you,
Chair.
Very kind.
Thank you, Chair.
Please.
Please.
No, I can't from my side. That's why I'm asking ICT.
Please. We can't be disrespected like that.
Exactly.
Yes.
We can't be disrespected like that person. You've got to put your foot down, please.
Honorable members, I do not have the function on my side to remove. That's why I asked ICT to remove the person. So it can be assisted in that. Otherwise, I could have done it myself. Please, ICT, also help us when we ask for assistance. We have 3 presentations that have been made, and at this point, I would allow members to engage with the presentations.
Chair, before the presentation.
Is that Honorable Majosi?
Yes.
Yes, Honorable Majosi, saying before we enter the presentations.
Yes. Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, honorable members and support staff. No, Chairperson, I just wanted to say that in future, can we at least agree to the presentations that we agreed upon, as Honorable Ndlozi said that on the yesterday's meeting that you had agreed of which presentations you are going to take. Can then administration not allow anyone to go into our meeting before they confirm that this person was agreed upon, that they must...
Can you please switch off your camera when you only switch it on when you are talking?
And who are you talking to?
Look, I don't know where the sound comes from. I'm trying to identify who's speaking.
Yes, that's so that we eliminate these problems, Chairperson, in the future, that we don't get people in our committee who are not supposed to be here. Can that be taken seriously on the side of staff? Thanks.
Honorable Majosi, I will deal with that with the staff because we're clear that it's internal only, and the briefing was that they are internal. So we'll deal with that. Can we now get to the members engaging the presentation? May I recognize hands?
Honorable Van Dam.
If you can, I want to check on the system first whether there are those who have raised hands. Yeah, so that I don't see anything on this system. May I then recognize the hands if you can just indicate that you want to speak.
Van Dam, Chair.
Kubeka, Van Dam. I see Honorable Mackenzie, is your hand up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other member? Because I just want to note, especially the first round. Josie.
Madisha.
Is it Madisha?
Yes.
Welcome, Honorable Madisha. So it's connected. Honorable Madisha. Any other member would want to speak?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Honorable Chilidzi, Gumbu, Honorable Mulala. In that order, Honorable Kubeka, followed by Honorable Van Dam, Honorable Mackenzie.
Thanks, Chairperson. Greetings to all members of the committee who are present this evening, the staff from the side of the Portfolio Committee, and also let me welcome the comrades, these three unions that have presented this evening. Chair, can I say maybe also today, I think it is a great day, having a chance just to give these other unions a chance in order that they must present their side. Also taking note that we still need to listen on the side of the SABC, as we know that SABC is our entity, but it's good today to have just other unions just to come and present whatever they know or they understand, as they are the ones who are working with SABC inside. I think we have done a correct thing today, Chair. Chair, let me say I'm happy because also on the side of the union, based on these frustrations that we find all ourselves inside, it's good because they at least they are having a chance to say if they are having those challenges, they are not coming only with the challenges. They are trying hardly to have some solutions in order that how best can they try to resolve the matter that it was confronting them. So I'm happy because now at least we have heard what is a real challenge. We were not wrong when we were saying also on the side of the SABC, let the SABC go back to try and find and correct whatever challenges that at least we've yet to say this is a serious challenge on the issue of the retrenchment and even the processes on how they dealt with this matter, Chair. We never made a mistake when we asked the Deputy Minister to say, go and engage and just check actually what is happening inside there in the SABC. So I'm sure today we can hear that in these presentations that they are presenting, we were raising the issue of the skills audit. They are presenting, and we can hear what are the challenges, all of us, Chair. We have raised the issue of the sabotage. You can hear in all these three unions, what are they saying, Chair? We have raised the issue of the editorial policy, Chair. You can listen to these three unions. What are they saying, Chair? So I'm saying we never made a mistake yesterday. And as we are here to support, to build this institution called by the name of SABC. But we are saying also we cannot allow the issue of abusing a power. That's what we are saying, Chair. Let me just say, you can hear on the issue of advertising when they are raising to say there is a serious challenge there, Chair. You can hear that we are convinced to say we cannot say on the issue of the bailout. We are having an interest to know or to play our role to understand how is it the amount assisted the entity. We want just to get a clarity on that. You can hear now today to say it seems as if somehow there are some hiccups, Chair. So when I'm raising this thing, Chair, I'll just come in the second round deeper to those things to say we never made a mistake when we are saying you can't come with the thing named by an operating model, but your team does not understand or they are not taking on board to say how best this operating model that you want to use, you'll work with it, with those teams that are there. As you understand that you need to have these role players in order that they must work with you and agreed if and only if the issue of retrenchment, is it possible to be used in that industry. So let me pause there, Chair. I'll come in the second round in order that now we must go deeper to say we never made a mistake when we were raising this thing yesterday to say we want our answers, clear answers to these questions that we have raised in the SABC. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I go? Okay.
Honorable Fanda.
Thanks, Chair. And I'd just like to say to the Editorial Forum, CWU and Bemau that thank you very much for availing yourselves this evening. And just to say I am deeply sorry that you are having to go through such a process in the middle of a global pandemic in winter, and to be dealing with the anxiety and the stress of being possibly losing your job. So I just wanted to say that, share my sympathies with that. And it is for that reason that I am very careful not to play politics with this. So, for example, I will not say to you that the retrenchments process must be stopped, it must end, because one, the minister can't instruct the SABC regarding the retrenchments process, even though she's expressed herself that she said that the SABC must stop the process. Legally, as you guys know very well, that the minister does not have the right to do that. It would be an illegal act. So that's why I thought it was important yesterday that we hear from both sides. And that's why I thought it was important to hear from the SABC, to hear from you guys, so that we can find a middle ground. Because the middle ground is needed in terms of the one side, we have an SABC that has projected a loss of 1.9 billion, that has a request from Treasury that they need to cut their wage bill, that we do not want them to come back and ask for another bailout. So that's the one interest. And then on the other side, it is you guys. And what I would like to see is, as Mr. Dubuisson said, is a process that meets the prescripts of the law, that is fair, that is procedural, that is as a very last resort. All other measures need to be considered before that's even considered. So I'm very happy to hear that you are saying that you understand that organizations from time to time may have to cut numbers, but what your concerns are regarding the procedure. So I agree with you that the skills audits is absolutely central to the retrenchments process. You'll recall that when they first mentioned it, I think it was at the end of 2018, we said that you can't just say you want to cut numbers. We understand that there was a report of the ad hoc committee, there's a requirement from National Treasury, but you need to do a proper skills audit, you need to do a salary audit, because you need to know in this unit, there's too many people. Maybe we can move those people, we can put them there. And then the salaries, where are they too high? So I think that is central. And I wanted to hear from the SABC yesterday whether they have indeed completed the skills audits, because last time they spoke to us, they said phase 2 was not done, but it would have been concluded. And I wanted to hear from them whether or not they can say to us as Parliament, do they now still agree that, do they still now believe that the skills audit is not central to it? Because that's wrong. It must absolutely be central to it. And then I just wanted to know about the skills audit. Who is, I couldn't hear very clear, but who's carrying it out? Is it a consultant that's been brought in? Which company is doing this? And then the sabotage. I think I'm in full agreement that real facts need to be put out there about what really happened. I agree that if, in essence, staff have been defamed by a process that has indeed been completed, that needs to be made very clear, whether it is publicly or with this committee. I think, again, that's why it was important for the SABC to speak, so that they can let us know, since the last time we spoke to them, what their positions are on these matters. But nevertheless, this is where we find ourselves. Our interest is to make sure that it is a fair process. It meets the procedures of the law. And I do not want a situation where you're sold dreams of saying that retrenchments will be shelved completely, because that's not going to happen. The only way that would happen is if government comes on board and provides the funding. And unless they're going to do that, I think you shouldn't believe anyone that is telling you that, because it is wrong, it is insensitive, and it is wrong to play politics with people's lives, because these are your lives. So thank you once again for speaking about this. You have given us a lot of information, which I believe it is now our duty to go and investigate. I believe the SABC has a lot to answer for, because along with, in terms of the principle of audi altrum partem, you need to hear both sides of the story. So I'm very interested to take this information you've given us now and say to the SABC, this is what the staff are saying. Or if it was vice versa with the SABC first, to say this, this is what the SABC is saying. Do you think this is true? So now that we have this information from you, we will now try and get those answers for you. But once again, just to say, it's an awful thing to have to live through at such a horrible time. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Van Dam, Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, all protocol observed, and good evening to presenters. Thank you very much for the information. It's always good to hear as many sides of the story as possible. Just in terms of Mr. Chabalala and the Communications Workers Union, I see Mr. Clyde Mervyn is there as well. I'd just like to greet you well from the fifth term, where we dealt with the South African Post Office. There seems to be a bit of confusion, and certainly a bit of confusion in my mind, around the SABC's unfunded mandate. I was always under the impression that, just like the post office, where it has a reserved monopoly in packages below 1 kilogram, that the license fees generated from the owners of television sets are used specifically for that purpose of the unfunded mandate. I just wondered if the Communications Workers Union has any figures around what the cost of that unfunded mandate is versus the revenue raised by the TV licenses. Just as an aside, the minister is going to provide 250,000 television sets to households before the end of the year, and that will generate about 66 million worth of TV license revenue. So I'd be very interested to know how you feel about that, what your comment is on that. I also have a great deal of sympathy with the staff at the SABC who are undergoing this process. It's a terrible thing to work in an environment where you stand a risk of losing your job and you feel that the process is possibly treating you unfairly. I can't comment on that. That's essentially a management operational issue. But I do see the human element behind this. We're not talking about numbers. We're talking about people and their livelihoods and their families' livelihoods. So you certainly have my sympathy. I need to contrast that. Google is my friend. And whenever anybody appears before the committee, I always put their name in. And in this case, I put in Communications Workers Union, SABC. And guess whose name popped up? Hlaudi Motsoeneng. In almost all of the searches, there he was. And that was the Communications Workers Union. So I understand that you're fighting for the rights of your workers. The SABC 8, who lost their jobs and their livelihoods, and some of them died as a result of that. When they fired, the Communications Workers Union threw a gala dinner for Hlaudi Motsoeneng and Faith Mutambi. So as you present to me and to this committee, that's what sits at the back of my mind. It kind of tarnishes what you're saying here when you say you're engaged in turning things around at the SABC. That concerns me, and it also speaks to the editorial independence and to the newsroom. And I was very impressed, by the way. I watched the news last night, and there was a former leader of a political party who appeared talking about going back to school and sending children back to school. So clearly you invite a wider range than just narrow political spokespeople. So, and I presume that is reflective of a new editorial thinking and a new editorial policy within the newsroom. So I was very impressed by that. Then just finally, in terms of the SABC's competition, Showmax and Netflix, for example, as two streaming services, and perhaps this speaks to the independent producers as well. I know that Netflix has set up an office in South Africa, more than an office. They've set up a production unit where they're actively producing content for both international and local audiences. I think Black Ship Sales or The Pirate Show was one of the things they produced. Troy was another. But they're very, very active in scouting locations and employing people here. And clearly that's an issue that has the SABC engaged with local offices of Netflix and production offices, or the Communications Workers Union. Have you engaged with Netflix in any way in terms of that? And when I look at Showmax, for example, Showmax is directly competing with the SABC in what they offer. Housekeepers, Pinky Pinky, Girl from, I watched that one as well, Nowhere, Girl from Nowhere, and my son told me a couple of others. All of these are available on Showmax. They're all local production, clearly featuring local crews. Our government, the ANC government, is very strong on competition in the telecom sector and in the broadcasting sector, very strong. Now the SABC is dealing with real competition. I'd be very interested to know how the union views platforms such as Showmax that showcase local content and how you think that will affect the SABC going forward. Thank you, Chairperson, for allowing me an input.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. Is that Honorable Josie? Honorable Josie.
Thanks very much. Yes, indeed. I'm sorry about the delay. Thanks very much, Chairperson. Well, let me welcome the presentations as well from the stakeholders of the SABC. I do want to, as a point of departure, Chairperson, re-emphasize, for the benefit of the understanding of the ones that are managing our committee, Temgosi and perhaps Chairperson yourself as well, that one of the fundamental problems that we've got to be careful of when we are dealing with questions that are so intimate to the survival of the SABC. We couldn't easily just entertain broader industry players, because then ENCA will also come and present here and say, because the SABC is a public entity, they have to speak. The producers sell content to the SABC, they sell content to MultiChoice and so on and so forth. These matters, we've got to at some point be able to draw the line. And so with the greatest respect, I want to request for the rest of us that this presentation we've just dismissed should not come back when it comes to this item. When we're talking about broadcasting policy generally and the act and all of that, that may be the case, but they are misplaced here because they've got a conflict of interest as people who are selling content to the SABC as producers. They are not employed. They are not in the employ of the SABC. They sell content everywhere, including to Netflix and so on and so forth. I think it's important, in my view, that we don't, even in the second, third, or fourth, or fifth round, have anything to do with them when it comes to this item. Having said so, Chairperson, I think, the newsroom and the news team, the journalists, collective journalists of the SABC, have done a remarkable job to restore the integrity of the newsroom. Many of us who have paid attention know where this team and the entire journalistic effort they've had to put to bring the SABC back to a news channel that is trusted by the public. The numbers speak for themselves. There is a science behind what these people have been doing. Once, we sort of balanced the scales for them in the previous many restructurings that started with the ad hoc committee. They put an effort and restored the newsroom of the SABC. The SABC itself is on record to have acknowledged that 404 is not just the only ones, but they are now the leading news channel in the country, and the numbers keep being positive. And now they're telling us they are making all of that effort already understaffed, short-staffed. I find it shocking, to be quite frank, that you are threatening the jobs of the people that have just given you, the best numbers in the last season. Actually, in the last 12 months, they've been doing and performing. I'm not saying there are no problems, but it's important to begin with that observation. The second observation is that, Honorable Mackenzie, the SABC content, it doesn't actually at the moment have any competition. The stuff that is happening in terms of telenovela, in terms of drama and all of that, remains the leading numbers in the country. They've never been removed from, being on the top, at least until recently, maybe with Moja TV or Moja Love. But it's a much more complicated reading there of the different platforms of free-to-air as well as the pay television platform. So, but I'm saying in a long period of time, if you look at it over a long period of time, they are the ones that have given audiences to MultiChoice. It's an important historic fact of the injustice that the SABC suffered, even financially, because of what I think were criminal free mass carry regulations that allowed them to donate not only content, but audiences for free to MultiChoice, which then grew at the back of the SABC. You must just think for a second, without the SABC audiences, majority of those channel viewership numbers on Mzansi Magic and so will probably be cut by 50% or even 100%. They survive because of a proper audience base that the SABC has built. That is the nature of the audience numbers of the public, of the broadcasting sector. So we're talking to people here who are actually as they present to us, these are the people who are constantly in the mechanics of constantly saving the SABC, of constantly delivering the content for the SABC, and they are facing these threats as we know them. So having said that, I do have some critical questions to yourselves. Firstly, to CW and Bemau is, what do you think is the distinction between a commercial broadcaster and a public broadcaster? Because you claim in both your presentations that the current restructuring process is driving the SABC towards being a commercial broadcaster. What is at the core? What is this that is being eroded? What is this distinction? Because you do not tell us what it is. So that when we do our oversight on the SABC, we are able to be informed by your internal experience of what are these features that make the SABC consistently a public broadcaster, distinguishable from a commercial broadcaster. What are those things that you are saying are being eroded in the restructuring or in the new turnaround strategies that are being proposed? On the skills audit, we agree. And I'm happy that you yourselves have acknowledged that anybody who received a job irregularly, either due to nepotism, due to falsifying qualifications, and so on and so forth, we have to all be committed that that's criminal, that person must be allowed to go. That is what I thought. If you read the ad hoc committee report of Parliament, that's what the skills audit was supposed to assist with. These other things of the skills audit helping you to reduce your wage budget is treasury. It's not the ad hoc committee report. But be that as it may, it's still okay if you can make that case. I don't agree. I don't agree with any austerity whatsoever. So in that sense, me and the honorable members, Van Dam and McKenzie, we will have to fight that one elsewhere. I don't think there should be a single job loss, particularly in an economy like this. You need more jobs to put money in the hands of people so that they can boost demand. That's how you're going to restart an economy that is falling apart. And then finally, to the Editors Forum, 2 questions. Is this the matter of sabotage sub judice or not? Sorry, there's an interfering sound here. Thank you. Is the matter of sabotage sub judice or not? Now, to answer that in a more informed way, you've got to tell us, whoever is involved here, have you taken the SABC to court or not? Because that's what the SABC means, that they've not been able to bring the issue into finality because it is sub judice. So you've got to give us 2 important pieces of information. One, is it true that it is not concluded internally? If it is concluded, tell us what were its conclusions. And if you can give us that documentation now, please give it to us. 2, tell us, as a result, have you taken them to court? Because that's what they mean, so that we are able to poke, because there's a possibility here, if the matter is not sub judice, then Honorable Chairperson, the SABC has misled Parliament, and it will be a serious a problem in relation to the laws of this country that we'll have to take it up upon with them. We can't be lied to, otherwise we won't be respected. And then the final question relates to some of you, I think, who were presenting. I saw Megan, who I know as a producer at some point in ENCA. The new editorial structure, could you guys just tease it out? I know you are saying you want it to formalize the editorial forum. And informed by the German experience, it's a brilliant suggestion. I naturally expected, after all those consultations, that the SABC was going to do so. I also disagree that you must give the editorial final decision making to the head of news. Is the same thing as giving it to a Saudi, but it's worse even in this case, because she's not, or he is not, in that position, an accounting officer in the board or in parliament. But the wisdom of the upward referral thing was that it's voluntary, number one. That's what Saudi changed. I saw them on a news clip, the SABC, saying that was an invention of Saudi. It was not an invention of Saudi. The upward referral policy was not an invention. It's very normal in many public broadcasters across the country, and it's voluntary. So when there are issues within the newsroom, they voluntarily take them up with the CEO, so that at all times the idea of the editor-in-chief is ceremonial, like the commander-in-chief. The president of the country doesn't get involved in the internal workings of the army, but there's an upward referral to that ceremonial position. But it's true that a true democratic solution in the final analysis is the formalization, the integration of an editorial forum, so that I don't have to capture one person. If I'm capturing you to do political interference, I must capture the rest of that committee. At this moment, I still need to just capture the head of news, who is now designated as the new editor-in-chief. So my question relating to ENCA is that there are claims that the new editorial structure of the SABC is exactly like ENCA. People are saying that SABC is becoming an ENCA light. Are you able to react to that, confirm or deny based on your experiences when you were working there? And do you think this particular move, is it what you are referring to when you are saying it is the commercialization of the SABC, uprooting it, as it were, from its status as a public broadcaster? I mean, I was very shocked that the Parliament news team, for an example, in the new structure, has been subdued to national news. It's no longer standing on its own. It's actually a serious fundamental, assault to the status of a legislature, of a law-making body, and the news team that covers that is just subdued into some. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. But I would like your reaction to that, and particularly in light of the fact that are those the aspects that you are pointing at to say to us it is becoming commercialized and losing its public broadcaster nature? Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm sorry to have been long-winded.
The following members would still want to speak. Honorable Majosi, Honorable Chilidzi, followed by Honorable Madisha. I had jumped ahead, I've just been made aware. Madisha would be followed by Honorable Faku. Then Honorable Mlala would be number last, as he was put as last. Can we just follow that order?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, let us maybe acknowledge the presentations that we have received from the CW, BEMAU, and editorial staff. But before, maybe I figured that the CW, and in fact all three who have presented in front of us have been in the SABC for quite some time. And as they've stated of the historical challenges that have been there, which are not new, and but what I saw on the CW was presenting a turnaround strategy of their own, and of which maybe that was not the case when they came here to present. It was for them to present their challenges in the SABC. And maybe to say, Chairperson, that as they have presented, all of them, and they've also presented the financial part of the SABC, they should have also given us on the reskilling and upskilling of employees on the digital migration that what is it that they see in the SABC and what is it that they expect, so that we get a proper reporting on it, Chairperson. And all these presentations, they seem to be contradicting themselves. When the presenter from CW said that the management and the board, they closed themselves in and did not include the stakeholders in the matter of retrenchments, and he comes back again at first and says at the start of the presentation and said that in the meeting that he was in, that they were in, and the discussions that were there were then sent to Sunday Times. Then I don't follow quite correctly. I would want people, when they come in front of us, Chairperson, to give us a reality, and so that we then understand what is it that is happening. And they were there when on the previous management and of the former COO who was there, and Claudi, who did a lot of things, Chairperson. I would not say in what form, but I have never received a report of the fifth parliament that maybe they've come forward to the communications department and complained that these are the things that were happening. Because part of the bailout, maybe I would think that of the litigations that were there were made by the former management. But with that, they will maybe respond to it on what measures did they take on the previous management, and as to how far, as now, how far have they gone with that. And I would leave that with what contradicts all these presentations is that they all agree that people were employed without proper qualifications, and stated that it was not their fault. Once you become a criminal, you must know that at some point in time the law will take its course and you will be jailed. So we must then take it on that point, but also say that it was not 100% their fault. Obviously, it was part of the management, which is the former management, which is the board, and the current management are dealing with those challenges. And there seemed to be no consensus in terms of the current board and the current management dealing with those challenges. And also that part of the conditions that were of the bailout, maybe if they can say, do they even know what was part and parcel of the conditions from the National Treasury, that they must try and reduce the salary bill, which was over the threshold, and how as they come up with all these challenges that they are saying here, what is it that they think could happen in the SABC? How can they help SABC to make sure that those things then are taken care of? And what about the public protector's remedial actions directed to the SABC too? What are they saying about that? And so we need that full diagram. As much as they have given us a full diagram of the finances, they should have given us a full diagram also of the employees, these ones who were unqualified, in fact, who were employed with no qualifications, these ones who do not possess the skills that are needed in the SABC, so that we then have that idea of what is it that is happening. Because I don't buy it, Chairperson. And the editorial staff says the management and the board thought that the skills audit was irrelevant. Now, one says it was not done well, one says the skills audit was irrelevant. Then can we get a one statement which at least says that they agree on it, that no, it's either the board did the skills audit or they did not and said it was irrelevant. We cannot have two things that are happening at once, Chairperson. So as they say that they were not included in anyhow, what interests me is how they have managed to achieve all these things that they have been achieved without the editorial forum being recognized as a structure. I mean, the turnaround of SABC News with highly credible news management, which the coverage of 2019 elections were rated at 99%. The critical public interest and universal access role for the information of COVID-19 pandemic, how were they not included in all of those discussions as the editorial forum? I would gladly want them to answer me on that, Chairperson. And I would think that it's a pity now that we are not all in Parliament. It was better that they would come and SABC would be here so that all of them are here as stakeholders and the SABC is here and we listen to what exactly is transpiring at the SABC. Because at the present moment, I just don't buy what is being said to us. I just don't buy what is being presented to us, both from the three presenters and from the SABC, because they all contradict each other. So we need a constructive engagement with them, Chairperson, so that we understand, one, the SABC is saying something, two, they are saying a different thing and accusing the SABC of certain things, of which it is not here to answer for themselves. So then you tend to not understand what is it that is happening exactly at the SABC. Thank you, Chairperson. Those are the ones, if they can just maybe tell me if they did come to the Parliament and requested that they wanted to present on the former managers who were there before, and maybe the former COO who was there before, and also of all these things that I've outlined, the Chairperson of the Editorial Forum, and they must say how were they involved, if they were not involved, and then how did the SABC manage to achieve all of this. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Kumbu, followed by Honorable Madisha, Honorable Faku, and then Honorable Malala.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thanks to the presentations made. And I think these presentations are going to assist us in the process we are going to embark on with the SABC. In fact, they have empowered us in a way. But just two clarity-seeking questions, Chair. I just want to know the number of the new staff members employed in the last 8 months, because you are talking about you're talking about, and I don't understand when you say they were moved simultaneously for retrenchment. I just want I don't understand that statement. And secondly, are there any other non-core business expenditures except on the part of the litigations which you are aware of, if there are any? Yeah, those are my two questions for now, Chair, just for clarity purposes. Thank you, Chair.
The Honorable Madisha, have you been able to reconnect back?
Yes.
Honorable Madisha. Yes, over to you.
And all colleagues.
Honorable Chairperson, permit me to start by indicating that SABC belongs to South Africans. This is the committee of Parliament, that is ourselves here, that represents the people of South Africa. There presently are almost 15 million people who are not employed. Most of those people are Black South Africans. And right now, SABC says they want to retrench 600 more people who, as I said earlier, are mostly Black South African people. And permit me again to raise this fact that each person in our country that is Black South Africans have got to feed not less than 10 people, which then says that if we allow SABC to continue in that way, more than 6,000 people are going to go hungry, they won't go to school, etc. Now, these are part of the major problems that we are faced with. And I did raise this when we spoke to the SABC the other day. But albeit we had spoken to them and said that we must sit and have discussions, they have gone on. And I will give an example of what I'm saying. Now, having comprehensively read the reports and listened to the inputs by the unions now, and I think they are all moving at the same level. They all agree. My question is, was there any space availed to the unions for discussions which would have led to a different resolution by the SABC? The final resolution being retrenchments, by all means. And secondly, I want to indicate that albeit we spoke to the SABC at some stage in the past, I have followed reports which indicate that Parliament, through this committee, although we had instructed SABC not to pursue its objective of staff retrenchments, SABC is proceeding. Hence, CCMA and Labour Court applications, whereat hundreds of thousands of rands have been used or are being used even now, and or given to lawyers who are not employed by SABC. And yet we know that in the SABC, there are lawyers who are part and part of the persons employed to represent the SABC. But SABC has now chosen to employ lawyers from outside of its own office. So that money has just been taken out, given to people outside, and which is basically wrong. This committee has gone to Parliament to request that Parliament must give SABC more than 3.2 billion so that we could deal with the momentous challenges that the SABC faces. But although that is the case, SABC, from the reports that we are getting, they don't even care about ensuring that the people that are employed there are looked after. The SABC goes on to disregard that which we have said they must not do altogether. Now, this is to me a major, major problem. And this is the time for us to show the SABC management that they cannot just do anything that they want. SABC does not belong to them. They are employees themselves there. SABC belongs to the people of South Africa, and it is the people of South Africa who must rise and say, we save the SABC or not. And I am saying we already have given SABC 3.2 billion. And some of us, to repeat, I had actually agreed with them that they must get more than 6.2 billion so that they could save SABC. But now, although we pleaded with the Treasury, we pleaded with Parliament, and they were able to get that money, they're just going on to do whatever they want. And I therefore am saying to ourselves here and to all people of South Africa, we cannot allow this kind of thing to really go on happening. Now, to the unions there, and I'm saying that I'm happy that they are moving together. I want to check with you, have you engaged with the human resource, that's in the development section of the SABC to address, rather in addressing this kind of problems that are there before you? Have you ever interacted with them? Was any space allowed for you at all? Or in all the outstanding areas that have led to the section 189, was there any involvement? Was there any interaction? I mean, if you talk, for example, about the skills audits, to the best of my understanding, the skills audits does not really say that if you do not qualify, then you must be kicked out. It doesn't say that. It means that if you are lacking, you must be taken for retraining, etc. But then what we are seeing here is just extremely wrong. There are people who have been there for more than 10, 15 years, but then they are now being told to go away because of particular skills that they are lacking. But has this been done? Have you, as the unions, sat down with the employers? I mean, I'm referring to that management to say, this is what has got to be looked into, and so on. I can give an example. I think one of the honorable members there have given an example of Taudi Mutweneng, who was struggling with matric, but was elevated to a position of COO. And yet in SABC, there were people who had gone to universities, who had academic skills, who could have taken that particular position. But then they were simply put aside. Now, if you talk about skills assessment, the audits, if you, as the unions, sat down with the management there to agree that this is the route that has got to be followed, these are the kind of skills that have got to be looked into, etc. Because from what is being said by yourselves, and I've listened, I've read your reports, the antithesis is actually the case here. But I want to say to you honorable members and the chair that this is nonsense that must not be allowed. SABC belongs to South Africans, and we, as this committee, report to government, we report to Parliament, and Parliament does not say you belong to this political party, you belong to that political party. Parliament is the owner of SABC. I mean, I know other people talk about shareholders, this particular percentage and so on. I will say, and of course you know, I don't have to convince you, SABC belongs to the people of South Africa, and all those workers cannot be kicked out by hook or crook. SABC must be called, they must come and give us a proper report and not go on and do whatever they want. As I end, Chair, I'm saying, yes, we have given them instructions, but then they just put our instructions aside and go on and implement that which they want to implement. Kick out people, retrench. We can't allow that kind of thing. We need to take a decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Madisha. Honorable Faku, followed by Honorable Mlala. Those are the
Thank you,
last ones.
Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to honorable members. Chairperson, first let us welcome the presentations from the stakeholders. I think, Chairperson, today we have been made clear of many things that we've been questioning all along. I think I fully agree with Honorable Dr. Ndlozi and Honorable Madisha on the points they have raised. I fully concur with everything they have said, but also, Chairperson, remember, in the committee, we have requested the SABC to bring the turnaround strategy. It was a struggle for them to bring this strategy to the committee, but finally they did. Now, my question is simple. Why would you think of retrenchments when you are sitting at 40% of your turnaround strategy, 46%? Why would you think of retrenchments when you are there? As we have listened to the presentation, how the skills audit have been flawed, I think these are the questions that SABC must respond to us. On the issue of litigations, I think this point I've been raising it, and today I think we have been cleared, but we'll offer SABC an opportunity to respond to these issues. And also, Chairperson, to take external people to make sure to sit in disciplinary hearings. Why is that happening? And this is the same money that has been, as it's claimed by the unions, it's the money that has been from the bailout. So I don't understand some of the decisions that SABC has come up with. So I've even listened to the union on the expression when it comes to the CCMA processes. You know, Chairperson, I think we've been consistent, and I think Honorable Madisha is raising a very important that the SABC does not belong to anyone but to the people of South Africa. And as this committee, we have a duty to play our role to make sure that we do oversight and get to the bottom of what is really happening to the SABC. I don't want to say much, Chairperson, but we want to thank the unions for coming forward to give us this presentation without fear and intimidation. I think when we meet with the SABC, we'll raise most of our questions there, but we want to say to honorable members, to the people that have come from the stakeholders, that we appreciate the effort that we are bringing. And I don't think as this committee will support it that 600 people must be jobless. This is not what this government is meant for. We must make sure that, as President has said, that we must protect jobs of people that are currently employed. And the Chair, I don't want to say much, and because it's important that we offer SABC an opportunity to respond to these issues that we want to respond. I think Honorable Ndlozi, Kubeka, and Honorable Madisha has raised most of the issues. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Faku. Honorable Malala, the last.
Thanks, Chair. I hope I'm audible. Thanks, Chairperson. And I must first thank the unions for their presentation, and also acknowledge that maybe we must first clear this process. This process is meant for us as Parliament to do consultation, because seemingly SABC is giving us different stories, whether they've consulted. And I liked what the Honorable Ndlozi raised, that they must be clear whether they were consulted or not consulted, so that we're clear. And maybe also clear this thing that this is not an inquiry, it's not a kangaroo court. We are not putting anybody through the gun. But most of you, honorable members, I'm sure, in this morning you have seen how the SABC has presented our meeting yesterday, and I must raise this concern formally, that the bigger issue that was raised on the media this morning was the issue of interference. So I want us to clear that first, because I think as Parliament, as Honorable Madisha said, SABC belongs to the people of South Africa, and we have been elected to represent exactly those people. So there's nothing wrong that we're doing. We are simply asking questions so that we are answered. So I must clear that. Secondly, the issue that maybe some of us did not hear properly was that the deputy minister did not instruct, I think it must be clear, did not instruct the SABC. He actually advised the SABC, because it's only us who can instruct them, because we are parliament, we are representing people, not any other person. But I just wanted to clear that. And most of the questions, Chairperson, I think they've been asked. Mine to the unions is relating to HR. I'm a bit worried where I'm sitting, that it doesn't look like in SABC we have a human resource department or unit. Because if for instance, I don't know what is so difficult about the skills audit, because if you have HR, every employee in any institution, before you are employed, there's a CV, there's a qualifications, there's a filing system. You should be knowing who qualifies for what. Now, the skills audit, in simple terms, simply means you have your qualification, match them against the job you're doing, look at your job description, how you have been performing in your position. If it's not the right position, what we have been doing, and then what has the HRD done, because they can't put you in a position where you don't qualify and they don't train you. So there's a lot of things that I can raise about HR. Now, my question to my fellow comrades is whether their HR unit is functioning, and they must indicate to us which unit are functioning at SABC, because there's an issue about legal fees and so on. Don't the SABC have lawyers? And what are they doing if they're outsourcing everything? Because from the presentation, it looks like everything has been outsourced. And this is the work of the union. It's not our work as parliament. It's the work of the unions. They must tell us, why are people outsourcing the function of the people who are employed? Because we need a response in terms of that. The second issue that I need the SABC to also talk to, it was raised by Honorable Ndlozi, but maybe I must raise it differently, but it's the same question, that there's seemingly a contest between a public mandate and what is referred to as commercial arm of the SABC. And I did not hear the unions and then editorial forum talking about that extensively, because they are talking that SABC is being commercialized seemingly, but they are not clearing us. We need to know, because our role is, in particular, when we do, I said that yesterday, that when we appropriate funds for SABC, we are not choosing, we're not saying we're appropriating funds for the public mandate. We are saying we're risking the SABC. Now, SABC includes both the component of the public mandate and this commercial one that is so secretive. Because I think we need to also talk to it, so that tomorrow or any other time when we meet SABC, we have clear facts. And I must appeal to you, comrades, that when you speak to Parliament, as one honorable member said, be honest with us, tell us the truth, so that we are able to help the situation. Our duty is not only to criticize the SABC, we must also criticize you if we feel that you are not providing us with adequate information. And in many instances, Chair, I would also request that all that information that you have made presentation about, please be assured that that information is reliable. Because if we go tomorrow and use your information